So on Monday, we started a conversation about it. We spoke to, Professor Kobby Mensah, who is political marketing expert at the University of Ghana Business School of the University of Ghana. We also spoke to Ben Efson at the time. Ben Efson making the point that he believes that Charles Opoku of the NPP was going to win. For Professor Kobby Mensah, he said, look, based on a few factors, even though he had not conducted a poll, he believed that the NDCs, if you look at the contest, needed this more, and thus we're going to win the elections. His predictions came true. So we asked that simple question: how come the polls got it wrong? This morning we're joined by two professors, one an associate professor and the other a full professor. Professor Ransford Gyampo is Professor of Political Science at the University of Ghana. He's on phone. And Associate Professor Kobby Mensah, who is a political marketing expert, also of the University of Ghana, joining us on phone. Good morning, Professor Kobby Mensah. Good morning, Professor Ransford Gyampo. Thank you very much for joining us.
Morning. Pairing the two of us together, we are going to be saying the same thing because I work closely with Professor Kobby Mensah. So I don't see what
let's see.
Say that I would controvert. We think alike.
Well, let's see. Good
morning,
Good morning, Kobby Mensah. Let's see how that turns out finally. But and I have different questions for Professor Kobby Mensah and different questions for you, Professor Gyampo. So let me start off with you, Professor Gyampo. So yes, you had indicated whenever you have been asked questions about elections, when you have not conducted research, you say I haven't conducted research. But for many persons, they've asked a question. The polls came out. Ben Efson had indicated Charles Opoku was going to win. The Global Analytic survey came out to say Charles Opoku was in the lead, with had a 1.1% lead. But on the day, the evidence was totally different. In fact, James Gyampo won with about 5,000 more than 50% more than he won in the 20 election. In fact, about 100% because he won about with 2,500. The question is, how come the polls got it wrong, Professor Gyampo?
Quality research is research that is based on evidence. And for one to be able to undertake quality research, the person must be socialized in the canons of social science research methodology. And if you are socialized in the canons of social science research methodology, you are trained in the art of research such that you would always know who to speak to with a view to ensuring that the findings and predictions that you make are with a certain degree of certainty. So basically, I believe that those whose research outcome and prediction were falsified simply had an issue with the methodology that they deployed on the ground. If your methodology is flawed, then you will not get things right. But when I heard some of the research outcomes being peddled around, I marveled because as a social scientist, at certain times, you would not need a soothsayer to be able to tell you the outcome of any potential research enterprise. At certain times, you look at the facts on the ground and you should be able to predict with a degree of certainty what is likely to be the outcome of a voter behavior demonstrated through voting. Now, it is a straightforward matter that Gyampo had been made overly popular by the MPP themselves. And it was also a straightforward matter that the man had courted a lot of sympathy for himself. It is also a straightforward truism that the current economic challenges plaguing Ghanaians were going to shift voting in favor of Gyampo. It is also a palpable truism that the people of Assin North are a people who are discerning, and it's an area that is described as cosmopolitan, and they are able to read in between the lines. And so the arrogant display of vote buying was also, in my view, quite insulting to many of them, and they were going to teach those who displayed these tendencies of vote buying some lesson. And so, for me, I didn't have to go conduct any empirical research. I mean, these were bare issues on the ground that made me wonder the basis for the prediction and the predictions or research findings of those who claim to have undertaken some research into that area. But it's a free society. Everybody says whatever he or she pleases. And so if you hear people claiming to have undertaken research and they go about banding their findings around, well, you can only also be cautious in not swallowing hook, line, and sinker whatever you are told. But I was quite surprised, given what I knew on the ground and what I still know on the ground. I was surprised that they claim to have undertaken this research. And one of the challenges could be that their methodologies were seriously flawed. And if you go through, undertake such an enterprise with such a flawed methodology, then you are likely to come out with findings that will completely not be supported by the true voter behavior of the people. So I'm saying these things, that the man was overly popular through the making of the MPP themselves. And I thought political strategy had eluded the MPP in the lead up to this particular elections. They made him popular. And then, given what was happening to him or what is still happening to him, and the fact that you had a whole sitting president going to make a prejudicial comment that the man is already on his way going to prison, forgetting that Kwame Nkrumah won an election when he was already in incarceration. And I was surprised that the president didn't know, apart from the fact that the comments were so prejudicial, he didn't know that that comment could also elicit more sympathy for the man. And then if you look at the way and manner the campaign was prosecuted by the ruling party, it was it amounted to a certain insult to the intelligence of Ghanaians, as if we don't know what is going on in Ghana. Times are hard, and bread and butter issues are always now a key determining factor of voting, particularly in cosmopolitan areas like Assin North.
Okay.
It was going to play up against them. And lastly, the arrogance display of vote buying, hurriedly going to construct roads, hurriedly going to commission new projects, and then when you are quizzed, what you are told is that, oh, these were the projects that were already implemented, and so it was already a program that we're doing, and so we are doing it, and it's not a matter of we using it as a vote buying mechanism. And I'm saying that this refrain that they give to us anytime we quiz them in their attempt to buy votes is quite insulting to the intelligence of the people of Ghana. And it's about time they change that strategy, because we know anytime there's going to be by-election, shoddy roads will be constructed. And the moment by-elections are over, the projects will be discontinued. When you go ask them, then they tell you that it was on our radar, we're going to construct it anyway. It was not because of the by-election. We are not dumb people. Okay. The people of Assin North, they are not dumb. They are able to read in between the lines. So if you're a politician and you keep on resorting to this particular stomach direction, vote buying attitude, and you cannot think to vary your strategy in the light of the fact that the people are now rational, then you yourself, you are more dumb than the people you are thinking are dumb. And so these are some of the factors that played up against the ruling party.
Okay.
And now it is important that they sit down to re-examine their strategy, very flawed strategy, and to see whether they can vary as they prepare to think about the agenda of breaking the eighth. But I'm saying that their strategy was flawed, and they themselves made the man popular. They gave him a lot of sympathy, and the economic challenges of the country played up, and the fact that their arrogant display of vote buying also played up against them. These are some of the things that I thought could have shaped the research enterprise of those who said they did some empirical studies and gave out findings. They are factors that they are the bare truth and bare factors. And so I was expecting that they would have known that these were going to be the deciding factors. But anything short of this meant that the methodology was quite flawed, and that's how come we didn't get it. They didn't get it right.
Let me bring Professor Kobby Mensah in at this point, because Professor Kobby Mensah, for some of, and Professor Gyampo makes the point. You look at all of these, but others also looked at it and said, from the figures, you'd realize that in 2020, James Gyachikwe Singh did so well in Assin Breku, where he hails from. Now, the NPP was presenting a candidate who also hails from Assin Breku, who's a philanthropist, and so the belief was that that was going to tilt the elections in their favor, because this was a man who was also liked in Assin Breku. Didn't that also matter in this election?
Thank you, Winston. I think my senior professor had completely exhausted the issues. Obviously, I would answer the question that you just asked. But let me make one request. It is not a mischievous request, but it's a request that would have immense impact. The young people of Assin North have composed a song which they say, Charles Opokusi kan yedi ehanya kumewo. Please,
yes.
That song, I wish that you guys will play it several times so that it sends a signal to the politicians that they cannot use money, use projects, just like Professor Gyampo said. The people are not stupid. We have seen this over and over again. We should let them stop. And maybe some of these things, the young people's songs that they've actually beautifully composed, would be a good song for the politicians to hear. Now, on your question, you see, yes, the idea that, there are other factors, the guy is a philanthropist, etc. Now, I will give you a perspective of marketing.
Okay.
When you had gone to buy a watch from seller A and you found the watch tasty, now seller B comes, you don't know the seller B. Are you going to change your watch, seller from seller A to seller B, or you're going to maintain the same seller? In marketing, we say that repurchase can only happen if a company had delivered. Now, if there is a new competitor, that new competitor must plug perhaps the gaps in the first one and must bring every compelling reasons why you should change your, your seller, isn't it?
Sure.
Now, the question is, we have seen so many constituencies hooting at their MPs. We haven't seen that from Assin North. In fact, not that I've seen. And now, the NDC is presenting the same candidate, and you're actually bringing another candidate, new candidate, which you claim comes from the same place and is a philanthropy. Now, how do you cross that gap? Because the point is that demographics alone don't win elections. In fact, it is about delivery. So if the people of Assin North are very comfortable, not very comfortable, but somewhat comfortable even with their MP, and you are coming with somebody who you claim is a philanthropy. Philanthropy is not the same as a politician. The skill sets are completely different. So for people to be able to shift their purchase behavior from someone who is a politician and they are somehow satisfied with, to a philanthropy they don't know. I think that the old adage, the devil you know is better than the angel you don't know, actually applies here. So for me, the compelling offering wasn't there, let alone, they actually shifting from supposed satisfied person to another person. And what makes it quite bad, as Professor Gyampo said, the entire country, I don't think, believe that the current regime has performed. So at the back of unsatisfactory performance, you go to the same constituency and you ask them to vote because over a night you were trying to actually construct a road or that everybody thinks that is a gimmick, especially coming from the back of Kumewu, for example. I think that it was clear that the people realized that they just want to be taken as, for granted. And as a result, they resoundingly rejected it. And even before the election itself, look at the evidences, as Professor Gyampo actually articulated. You have someone that people haven't outrightly rejected or haven't sent footages to say that we don't want him. So somehow there's a certain satisfaction there. Now, you have somebody who is not politically attuned. He says he's a philanthropist. But he's not politically attuned. So how do you expect that people will move from the other one, to someone who is not? And the idea that the polls actually got it wrong is because contextually, which Professor Gyampo has also said, you have to analyze the numbers within the context. And in research, there is something called triangulation. Every researcher, academic researcher, will triangulate the data. We do not just say survey, quantitative, so you put it out. You have to triangulate your data with other sources in order to come to a conclusion that indeed the evidences that you're having is comprehensive. Because if you have one source of data, it means that you're actually looking into one dimension. You're actually having one spec and then watching it. In social sciences, we don't do that, which Professor Gyampo has articulately said. You have to have a certain methodology that is robust, that is rigorous, that can actually tell you that indeed the evidences that you are getting from here is being corroborated from other sources. I would have wished that those who did the study, and I'm not refuting their study because obviously in the polls give us some level of insight, but I think that they could have gone beyond the numbers to triangulate the data and add on top of the numbers the context to see whether indeed the evidences that they are getting is sufficient to put out as someone leading the race.
Okay. Finally, Professor Kobby Mensah. So, in the build-up to the election, John Mahama said this is a referendum on the performance of the government. The NDC has won, and for the NDC, it's a sign of things to come. Would you say it was a referendum on the performance of government and sends a signal
I don't think so.
to the
I don't
NPP?
think that it's a referendum because when we say referendum, we mean a very, detailed kind of thing, especially when it comes to elections, and I'm sure Prof. Gyampo will be better placed to talk about this. In elections, when we say a certain vote is a referendum on the current administration, you need a complete wipeout, all right? And then, of course, the sample of that particular constituency must be a true reflection of the country. That is, it has to be a microcosm. You need to have the people there being a somehow very close reflection of the entirety of the country, not necessarily in terms of size, but demographies I'm talking about. You want to see that similar demographies can replicate or is replicated across the country. Then, of course, you could say that it's a referendum. But if it is not, reflecting some of these, frameworks in terms of how we say that a certain, election is a referendum, then I think we can't say that. Because there are some people who actually feel that the country has actually, or the government has performed. Of course, they're in a minority because majority of the people, but also the campaign has effects. Now, the question is, did NDC actually try out some new methodologies that they are taking into 2024, which had performed, which has actually yielded results, and as a result could be replicated? Perhaps they know that they have, or we don't know that they haven't, or they have. All right. So I think that yes, the country is not in a good place. Many people don't believe that the country is in a good place. Of course, Assin North might have shown it, but I don't think that you say microcosm of what is going to happen in 2024. They need to do a lot of work.
Okay. Professor Gyampo, would you say there's a referendum and is a sign of things to come in 2024?
Oh, I believe that Professor Kobby Mensah has explained, and I share similar sentiments. If I want to go further, what I know is that, look, if you look at the by-election in Kumewu and the fact that the NDC was able to appreciate some votes, and if you look at the resounding victory of the NDC in the Assin North By-Election, what it tells us is that if elections were to be held today, NDC will win. But between now and 2024, it's a long period for so many things to happen.
Okay.
And so I am unable to predict with certainty who is likely to win the 2024 election because things are likely to change. And if the MPP is really serious in breaking the 8, then they can put in mechanisms to address basic bread and butter issues. They can put in interventions that will stop them from dipping their hands into the pockets of Ghanaians to take away their pension. They can put in interventions that would bring a certain sense of economic and financial security to Ghanaians. And these may now then begin to play up in favor of them and then make the 2024 election quite competitive. But if they don't do anything about what is going on, and if they go on the tangent that I see many of them going, then it will be difficult for them in the future.
All right. Professor Ransford Gyampo, thank you very much. Thank you also, Professor Kobby Mensah, for making time to join us this morning. We're grateful to all of you. Heard from Professor Ransford Gyampo, Professor of Political Science at the University of Ghana, and Professor Kobby Mensah, Political Marketing Expert, also at the University of Ghana.